Welcome to From the Rooftop Music Podcast, a production of Rooftop Music Rehearsal and Recording Studio, located in beautiful downtown Chattanooga, Tennessee. Welcome to From the Rooftop Music Podcast, a production of Rooftop Music Rehearsal and Recording Studio in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Today, our podcast guest is Joe Evans. Joe's current music jobs are guitar player with the Chattanooga Monday Night Big Band, the Premier Jazz Orchestra, Off the TOP, and the Joe Evans Trio, although Joe points out that that trio can be anything up to a large sextet, depending on the personnel or instrumentation. Joe is also a music producer and sound engineer, currently working for various composers and is a composition arranger in the Chattanooga area as well as throughout the country. Most notably, Joe worked with Ryan Chapman Jazz Orchestra in South Florida and composer Michelle Fernandez and her Girasol Ensemble. Fernandez composes a variety of works from middle school level to collegiate level jazz bands. Many of her works are available for purchase on Hal Leonard's music website. Over the remainder of 2025 and into 2026, Joe will have upcoming projects that include an organ trio and a modern rock ensemble, with a caveat, day gig permitting. That day gig just happens to be local Chattanooga physician. Joe is also founder of 7 Off Music Company, a new LLC offering recording, mixing, video work to musicians in the local area. Welcome, Joe. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Tell me a little bit about, since this podcast is juggling personal life, work life, and music life, tell me a little bit about your current relationship status. You married, have children?
Sure. I'm currently engaged. I do have a 18-year-old son from a previous marriage, and he's set to start UTC this year. He's going to be doing music production at UTC, or music composition, I should say, music composition.
Good. Well, congratulations. And from our previous conversation, I understand you've been here in Chattanooga about 13 years.
This time, yes. I was actually born and raised in Chattanooga, although I've been living elsewhere in between now and then and now. But I've been living in Chattanooga since 2013.
Okay.
So about 13 years. Mm-hmm.
And so tell me about that journey where you left Chattanooga, came back, and then, a little bit about what you've seen in Chattanooga since you were young, and if you had any kind of awareness of the music scene in Chattanooga before you left, or maybe a little bit about the Chattanooga music scene after you came back and what you've seen over the past 10 years or so.
Sure. I graduated the University of Knoxville in 2004 with my jazz and studio music degree. From there, I came back to Chattanooga. I was already playing in some bands here in Chattanooga, occasionally sitting in with folks around this area. Upon completing the jazz program in Knoxville, I came back to Chattanooga. I started off, just with really no foot in the door anywhere. I started off actually having to wait tables downtown until I got a steady teaching gig throughout the day. For music. I also taught at Chattanooga State Community College. I taught the jazz band, jazz guitar, and modern bass there for about 4 or 5 years. I started teaching at a place called the Music Instruction Studio, which I believe is still around. I'm not sure if it's under the same ownership, but I think it's still something here in town. I taught at Tennessee Temple University. Jazz guitar and modern bass there as well. And then at night, that was my, that's when when we'd be playing the gigs. So, beforehand, back then, this was around the between 2000 and 2010. The music scene was, I would say the music scene was, it was something, but it's not nearly on the scale that we have now in Chattanooga. Back then, there was only a handful of venues available to play. I played most of them, I'm pretty sure, throughout that time. But then again, it was harder to market yourself as a musician in Chattanooga back then. Instagram wasn't a thing. YouTube was still pretty much in its infancy. Facebook was just starting up. I think we had MySpace.
Yeah,
Was
I
the
remember MySpace.
So I guess the best marketing you could do was through MySpace, which wasn't bad. I mean, you could actually add
Right.
music and everything to your profile. But yeah, so that was kind of it was harder, I think, as a musician back then, unless you knew people. Everything was more word of mouth. But that being said, I had a lot of friends who were in the music scene here in Chattanooga, and kind of got me hooked up pretty quick. I did leave for about I guess about 10 years. Went off to medical school, um, and then after that came back to Chattanooga, where I saw a much more lively music scene for sure, more venues, more opportunities to play, and met other musicians there who were, um, they were doing better than I could back, when I was younger and trying to do music full time.
Yeah, very interesting. So when I put this podcast together, what I envisioned was people juggling a day job. That job could be at night, a relationship with a significant other or family or friends even, and then having this other life. It's almost like you jump in the phone booth and put your music cape on, and then you go out and you play music. And I came across you, and you were and the way I envisioned that was this one life during the day that's different than this one life at night. But your previous life was music during the day and doing a music thing, and not really jumping in a phone booth and putting on a cape. It's just kind of grabbing your instrument and instead of working inside a studio in a classroom scene, to going and playing in a bar. So, it sounds like that was something that was enjoyable to you and that you did for a while. And then you decided to pursue this other thing. Was it something about the industry, something about Chattanooga, what was the impetus that made you want to go and kind of make a right turn, getting out of the music education space?
Sure, yeah. So like, I guess like all in musicians, when you're first starting off, you have, you set your sights, you set your goals high. I remember back then I had plans on, kind of, taking root here in Chattanooga, but also, trying to, get my name out there, obviously become a better musician throughout this time, and then, ideally kind of weasel my way into the, maybe even like the national scene or New York or LA.
Right.
At that point in time, I just finished the jazz program. I was very jazz oriented, so not much going on in Chattanooga as far as the jazz scene goes. There were jazz bands. The Monday Night Band was alive and kicking back then, just as well as they are now. Um, but yeah, so I was married at the time. It was around the time that we found out that my then wife was pregnant. That really kind of put the brakes on a lot of plans. We um, at the time I was, all these teaching gigs I had, even on the collegiate level, were also they were just adjunct positions, and I did not receive any benefits. So all my health insurance and everything was just, it was through my, the marketplace essentially. Um, we didn't have any means to pay for the pregnancy or the delivery. I did have to pay for that out of pocket. So that was one thing. We realized that without benefits, without some sort of occupation in town that could help pay for medical bills. There was no. And granted, I was in my 20s, and retirement wasn't the first thing on my mind. But there was no retirement plans in place, that kind of thing. Things that the average person graduating college would be seeking on their first job. That being said, I looked into the medical field, because I always had an interest in medicine. I started off actually in the nursing program, or the pre-nursing program at UTC. Um, and throughout that time, I had some really good advisors who eventually kind of teased out, within me that I was probably more suited for the medical field versus the nursing field. But that's what got me into the medicine thing.
Great, great answer. I want to talk a little bit about the educational music industry, and was it difficult for you to get into that in Chattanooga, or with the degree that you had, you kind of just slid right into that? And then just maybe some of your observations about being in that profession, and the longevity potential that it has, and maybe share some insights on some of your colleagues. Did your colleagues also have similar paths where they didn't see any longevity there and they had to make a move as well? It seems like we're losing access to art and music because state and federal budgets are being cut. And I guess what I want to get at a little bit is how do we keep people in those fields without having to, out of desperation, or maybe desperation is not the right word, but out of necessity, uh, get out because they can't afford to do this thing that they really love, that they dreamed about since they were really young.
Sure, yeah. Um, so uh, I assume that anybody who's out there playing music these days, they're doing it because they truly love it. Um, and I think even to this day, I don't think I could be playing music unless I truly loved it. I mean, it's expensive. You have to buy
Yeah.
the gear. You have to, it's expensive to be a musician, and it makes it hard to really kind of pursue those endeavors, if that's where your heart is, just because of the, I guess, current climate of the way the educational system is, especially these days. But no, coming back into town, I did have a few friends who were already teaching in these spots that I essentially just inherited from them. They were moving on to other things. The person who got me, or who got my foot in the door at Chattanooga State, he was actually transitioning out of music full time into I believe he does web design now, I think. So he was scaling back hours at the college and needed somebody to kind of cover for him. I got my foot in the door. I started there, and kind of the same with the other locations that I was teaching at. Um, but that being said, I think that a lot of these guys who actually took over for me when I went to medical school, they also were teaching for a short time. They also had music degrees, but they also kind of saw the uh, I guess at least in Chattanooga, there's a point where you kind of hit a ceiling. You kind of realize that ceiling, um, and I think that's the point where these other musicians also have kind of left um, the teaching realm and gone on to other things. I know friends who've taught there after I did. They went on to get their PhD in computer science. Someone, like I said, web design. So yeah, it's hard to justify staying in the educational field with the way that they've been kind of scaling back a lot of the programs here in town.
Interesting. So and I guess what I'm getting at a lot in these podcasts is advice for people, advice for juggling that day job and music career or music journey. Um, and I think your situation gives you the ability to advise younger people that are interested in getting a degree and going into teaching on the college, in high school or college. What would be your advice to them for people that may be watching this podcast that want to get into music education?
Yeah, so music education. Well, obviously, if they're going into education of any kind, they have a love for teaching. They have a love for, the students and the relationships they develop with their class. So that's one thing. They have to have the mindset and have the heart. And that takes a very special person. But usually, by the time they're in college and doing this, they know who they are. Um, for me, teaching was something that I didn't really anticipate doing. It just kind of fell on my lap, and this was something to kind of help pay the bills in the meantime while I was still trying to, play at night, and I was even doing recordings back then, trying to offer my, studio work to people. Um, but yeah, and I mentioned this a while ago, but if you have, if your heart's in music, you're going to find a way to play music, whether whether you're having to pay out of pocket to do so, or you're able to make ends meet, so that it remains kind of a steady state in your lifestyle financially. So I think, yeah, it's hard to say, for advice. I think, if your heart's in the right place and you know who you are, I think, it's a decision you can make without having to um, reconsider it. But like I said, for me, the teaching didn't come with, the added benefits of healthcare, life insurance, all things you would normally see in an academic setting, an official academic setting, like a high school band director or something like that.
Good answer. Let's talk a little bit about your day job now, your journey transitioning out of music educator to your medical practice.
Sure. Night and day difference. Um, so currently, my schedule is that I work 7 days on. These are 12-hour shifts, 7 days on, and then I have 7 days off on the backside. So throughout the year, I'm just alternating these weeks on and off. Um, so the 7 off actually gives me quite a bit of time to pursue more musical endeavors. Granted, I have to do all the extraneous life stuff that just comes with life during that time as well. During my work week, I'm pretty much dialed in to being a physician and putting my efforts into that job. But then the 7 off, it makes it nice. I can really I can spend time in the studio. I can spend time practicing. Only very rarely am I able to make rehearsals or gigs after a day at work. Primarily my gigs are scheduled for the off weeks.
And when you have your physician job, what are your hours? What time do you go in and what time do you get off?
Usually it's 7 a.m. to 7 p.m.
Okay.
We
And do
do have a
you, oh, go ahead. I was just
so
gonna,
we have occasional shifts that'll pop up where I can work like a noon to midnight or even like a 3
okay.
p.m. to 3 a.m. But essentially it's 7 a.m. 7 to p.m. to 7 p.m. Um, and it doesn't really give you time. If you need to go to the bank, you just can't do it. You have to do it on your week off.
Right.
Kind of thing.
So do you ever find the need to unwind after a stressful day in healthcare and you pull out your guitar when you get home, or what's that like for you?
Yeah. If anything, it's becoming more of kind of the guitar playing is becoming more of a musical therapy for me at night. There can be some very difficult days in the hospital. Um, but I do find that a lot of this stress and just kind of the energy I have when I come home from work, the music really helps kind of allow it to dissipate, allow it to kind of um, just dissolve, convalesce, if you will,
Yeah, that makes
throughout the
total
evening.
sense.
And yeah,
When
it
you're
makes a big difference. I definitely say I would. Um, it's definitely becoming more and more of a vice for me. Just getting home and being able to play guitar for a little while, get my head out of the
right.
medical mindset for a bit.
Yeah, one of the bands I was in when I lived in Athens, Georgia, the other guitar player was an emergency room physician, and he had all kinds of crazy stories about the emergency room, and he did a residency at LA County, and um, told me about a paper he wrote about just the crazy things that he would run into at LA County. And I think even after he moved to Athens, Georgia, he was in a band. I guess they were the Doctors or something like that. So, and I think I've seen a band here in town that was a bunch of doctors, maybe, or have you heard of any of these guys?
I want to say I've heard one or two from time to time. I've never heard them play. I couldn't tell you who was in them, but I think I've
Right.
heard of such. Yeah.
So when you're obviously when you're uh, on the floor, and I don't know a lot about what physicians do in the settings that they do them in, but do it seems like you have to be aware of everything going on around you, but do you ever get to put your headphones in and listen to music while you're going throughout your day, or what's that like?
Yeah, there are times. So what I do my title is a hospitalist, and so there's a lot of time spent charting. Definitely, music can help kind of get you through those times. That can become quite tedious. It can carry on into the next day. It can, sometimes depending how busy you are. So just having some headphones around is really helpful.
Good. What about the influences when you were young that had you thinking about the medical field?
I had a couple friends, some family in the medical field. My sister was actually in pharmacy school when I was still working as a musician. So there was some influence there. I had a few family friends that encouraged me to kind of look into that. But yeah, it's it was something I didn't really picture myself doing at that point in time. In my mindset, I was a musician. That's what I did. I thought maybe nursing might be something I could kind of do on the side, just for some extra help. But no, the medicine thing kind of caught me off guard. It was really my advisors in college who really kind of steered me in that direction, seeing how hard I was working, and they saw the drive and thought it might be better suited for the medical field.
Interesting. I just you reminded me of something that's tangential to me in the medical field as well. The genesis of my wanting to play guitar. I was coming home one day, and I grew up in Mobile, and we have in this old part of town, the old antebellum part of town, and all these old houses built 100, 150 years ago, have alleys going down the backyard. So I'd be walking home from school, and I was walking down the alley, and I heard this guy sit in his backyard playing guitar, and he was playing some Bob Dylan stuff, and I'm like, oh, that's pretty interesting. And I walked over there and stood by the fence, and he was a nurse, and his name is Tony Matranga. He's one of the guys that taught me how to play guitar and taught me my first chords. And so
Nice.
there's another medical thing that's tangential to me that I hadn't thought about till I sat here and talked with you.
Mhm.
Um, the
Nice.
influences you had for music. What about those when you were young?
Oh man, I just remember being about 12 or 13 years old and just being just captivated by everything that was going on back then. This would be around 92, 93, 1992, 1993. Uh, Guns N' Roses was huge. Metallica was
Right.
huge.
Right.
Aerosmith was still putting out songs. Pearl Jam, Nirvana, just all of these guys. I mean, that's where I fell in love with the guitar. Just watching all these guys, just up there doing their thing. A lot of my friends also influenced me. I guess they were very much into the Jimi Hendrix, the Led Zeppelins, the Pink Floyds, all the stuff from the '70s, which I still to this day love and has been very influential to me.
Very cool. What about your first concert? What was your first concert?
So, well, kind of embarrassed to admit this, but it was actually a
No
Garth Brooks
embarrassment.
concert.
Oh, that's awesome. He was hot back then. He was the
I
big deal
was,
back
yeah,
then.
yeah, back in the early '90s, he was all the rage. I was obviously I was not driving or anything. My parents were big country fans. They love Garth Brooks, and so they bought us all tickets to go to a Garth Brooks concert in Knoxville at the Thompson Bowling Arena. That being said, I wasn't really into country music, but it was a fantastic show. I mean, they knew how to put on a show, and it was great.
I bet. Yeah. Was there a was there a surprise at that concert where you might have zeroed in on something that you hadn't really thought about before you went there? And I'm thinking of I've seen Tom Petty a few times in his prime, and I've always been a drummer wannabe. And I remember one time going to watch him play, and there's this jazz drummer that he somehow got to play with him named Steve Ferroni. And I went there to see Tom Petty, but Steve Ferroni was such a fantastic drummer, and the bass player was really good that I spent most of the night just watching this guy play drums, and it was something totally unexpected before I ever got there.
Right, yeah. For me, I think it was being my first concert. I was still pretty young and impressionable. I was 12 or 13 years old, but I remember seeing the caliber of musicians playing with him and his band. The guys who were, the guitar solos and the just how well they were able to move around their instrument. That was these are all obviously professional musicians. Probably out there in Nashville doing it every day.
Yeah, probably
Like it was
Nashville
nothing,
guys.
but.
Yeah,
Um, but it was a musicianship that I really kind of found myself in tune with, and that carried over obviously to Guns N' Roses with Slash, or
right,
Led Zeppelin with Jimmy Page, that kind of thing.
right. Um, what about your most recent concert? What would be your most recent concert?
Well, I guess big concert.
Any concert.
Oh, any concert. Oh, I'm always heading out to Barking Legs to see guys play, whether it be friends or just not friends, but people that I've
Right.
I've heard and know about. Um, uh,
How
my
about concert at a venue like Soldiers and Sailors or Tivoli or the Walker or Bridgestone or a major venue where you might go on Ticketmaster and buy tickets or wherever.
Right,
What's
yeah.
most recent?
We've really scaled back on going to concerts recently. I'm not sure, with all the Ticketmaster stuff and all the extraneous prices and stuff, just or the extraneous charges on all the tickets you buy these days. I'm not sure. The last big show I went to was actually a Chattanooga Symphony concert. I took my son. It was the Rachmaninoff
Oh, very
Piano
nice.
Concerto, number three. Um, which was which was probably one of the most amazing things I've ever seen.
Oh, that's awesome.
But that's probably the most recent one I've been to.
And your son is how old now?
He turned 18 in February.
Okay. What are his music propensities? Does he have desire to be a musician? Does he just love music?
He plays cello, and he's actually quite good at cello.
Very nice.
But he wants to go to school right now for music composition because his love is not so much in bands and that kind of thing, but more so in movie scores and video game
Very
scores.
nice.
He's more he's found a fondness for that, so that's what he wants to pursue. Even though
Good.
he does play a little bit of piano, he plays cello very well.
That's a good niche. So you saw Garth Brooks, you were 12 or 13. How long after that did you start playing guitar?
Probably right after that. I
Okay.
think for my 13th birthday, I did get a guitar. My dad went to the pawn shop, bought a red and white Strat
That's great.
clone. It was a Lotus.
Yeah, I know the
Um,
Lotus. Yeah.
yeah, and and he got this real cheap amp, and I sat in my room and I could play maybe a Rolling Stones song, and that's it for like a year and a half.
Driving your family crazy.
Oh yeah, yeah. I can't get no satisfaction. I can play that guitar part.
And did it stick? Did you have you been playing ever since, or was there a time where obviously you probably didn't play a lot when you're in medical school, but just
Yeah.
from that first pickup of a guitar, and I know the love that you have for that thing, it just sits there in your bedroom, and you wake up in the morning and you just jump over and start playing it. What
Yeah,
about that
yeah.
experience?
Yeah, yeah. So it started off kind of slow. I wasn't, it was frustrating not being able to play this thing. I thought it looked like the coolest thing in my room. It just sat there, like you said. You wake up, you look at it, it's right there. Um, I thought it was the coolest thing ever. My parents did invest in lessons for me.
Good.
Soon after that, that's where I really started, learning how to play more things, learning, kind of my way around the fretboard, that kind of thing. I was enamored by it. I loved every bit of it. I got real comfortable playing blues and rock and roll back then. Was with several high school bands, um, and really just really loved it. Um, when I went to medical school, and not to discourage anybody from going to medical school, but medical school is it's a very hard time. It's a very dark time. You're spending 12 to 15, 16 hours in a library, or or your little cubicle studying, medical stuff. I played guitar very little. Um, so for me, it was even a darker time because I wasn't able to play guitar as much as I wanted to.
Yeah,
Um,
I bet.
I would be willing to, I would say I probably picked up a guitar maybe once a month for about 10 years after the
Oh
while
man,
during medical school.
that had to have been tough.
It just, it's hard, but
Yeah,
you're doing it for the greater good, and down the road you'll be
right,
able to pick it back up. And it was just kind of one of those things you have to sacrifice in order to,
right.
um, make ends meet.
Did you have any other other family members that were musicians?
I did not.
You did not. What
I
about
was
on
ill.
your parents' side or grandparents or anything like that?
No, no. My grandfather he loved classical music. I actually have this collection right now, but he has a vast collection of classical music records. And I would always listen to music with me when I was a kid. My dad had owned one of those Yamaha guitars that everybody had, those Yamaha
Yeah,
acoustics from the 60s. But no, really nobody was a musician in my family.
interesting. Just kind of came out of left field.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about the multiple people you play with here in town, the Monday night big band, the jazz orchestra off the TOP.
hmm
That sounds like it's keeping you pretty busy. What are you up to with that?
Yeah. So with those bands, it's beneficial for me because the time constraints outside of the actual performances is very minimal. Any big band show, we're pretty much reading charts. I feel like I can sight read well enough to show up and just play the gig, as long as the chart's in front of me, which is nice. There's no rehearsals involved. Well, we do rehearse sometimes with the Monday Night Big Band, but and the Premier Jazz Orchestra, but it's far and few in between. Um, but the jazz genre is really beneficial in that way that you kind of just show up and everybody knows the same songs and you kind of make up
Interesting.
half of it anyway. So you can kind of you can do that without having to do much else out of those gigs. Um,
That's something that's pretty foreign to me. I just started playing with a new group playing bass about 6 weeks ago, and I don't sight read music. I can read guitar tablature and chord charts. And we had a rehearsal last night, and I can see um, all the time that everybody puts into it before they get to rehearsal. And
right.
I'm doing that as well. And it just seems kind of foreign to me that you would never have to rehearse with a jazz group. You just get your sheet music and show up. That's something that's very foreign to me.
Yeah, yeah, and so, but I do miss playing with the rock bands and stuff. I have so many rock guitars that they can just sit here and collect dust, but that is, like you said, it does require rehearsals. You do have to put in the work beforehand, and you know even like with pedal boards and amp settings and different gear, you have to be prepared.
What about some of the other groups you're playing with in town? Uh, we ripped off about three or four of them when I did the intro.
Sure, yeah. Actually, the Off the Top band is something just brand new. I've rehearsed with them a couple times, or well, just once at this point, with hopefully some gigs coming up later on this year. Um, that'll be new. That'll be something I can actually kind of branch out a little bit and do more kind of funk rock,
Very cool.
which is something I haven't been able to do in quite some time.
What are you playing
Uh,
in that group? Guitar?
Guitar.
Or anybody else of note that plays around town in that group?
Oh yeah, yeah. I think everybody in town plays around, or everybody in that group plays around town. um, in other bands. I knew actually when I showed up for the first rehearsal, I pretty much knew everybody in that band from all different times of my life. You know, they weren't all there, you know,
Right,
at the same
right.
time earlier when I knew them, but they all are now playing in this band, which was kind of I thought was
It's
pretty
kind
funny.
of come around full circle, didn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Um,
Otherwise, I do mostly jazz. That's kind of what I fell in love with when I went to the school for music. Um, uh, but a part of it is because I feel like if you can play jazz, you can almost wing everything else.
I believe that
Even
as
blue.
well.
I can show up at a bluegrass jam or something like that, and kind of fake some bluegrass knowing jazz. So um, it seems to be the one thing I need to practice the most in order to be able to do the most, to have the most variety and be the most available for say other producers who need guitar parts for whatever song.
Right. It seems like Chattanooga's having a bit of a resurgence for jazz now. I know Adam Stone is putting together a jazz festival later in the year.
Hmm.
Uh, how have you seen Chattanooga mature in the jazz scene over the past few years?
Definitely a lot more awareness than when I was here first. I guess I don't know, phase one of my music career. Um, uh, Definitely a lot more awareness. There's a lot, and again, Adam's great. He's really promoting not only himself but just the Chattanooga music scene in general, and doing them such a great service, making um, making themselves known and again the venues have I guess with all the development of the South Side in Chattanooga,
Right.
there's a lot of venues popping up now that weren't previously there, and all in all, Chattanooga is just a much bigger city. It seems like to me than it was when in the early 2000s.
Very cool. Tell me about so you've got several groups you're playing with now, and you're also about to get married. Tell me about the dynamic of juggling seven on, seven off, and then on the seven off you're doing music stuff, and then you're also juggling this relationship. How are you able to manage that and maintain that and keep everybody happy?
Sure.
That's what this podcast is all about, by the way.
Right. Yeah. So, um, well, so one, my fiance is a nurse, so she
Okay, that
gets it.
helps. Yeah.
She knows what life is like on from one job to the next, and we've been together for many years, so she knows where my heart is. She's seen me build this entire studio out of my basement during the COVID pandemic, when I couldn't really go anywhere. Became a little stir crazy and kind of did all this here in the basement. Um, so she knows that that it's something that makes me happy. She knows that my day gig can very much bring me down. It can be hard days in the hospital. So she sees it as my therapy,
Yeah.
because guys, as a man we can't go to real therapy, as they say.
As a music and medical professional, you can't go to therapy. The music is your
Yeah.
therapy. It's my
But
therapy as
music,
well.
it really does. It really does. It really kind of brings me back and grounds me for all intents and purposes. The music does. Yeah.
Good.
So she's very tolerant of my hobbies. I guess I can call them hobbies. Um, but then she knows what I'm going through on a daily basis in the workplace, and she used to she used to work alongside me at the same hospital, but she's since moved on to just different things. But all too aware of what goes on there, and knows why I do what I do
Yeah.
with this. And then she's also that being said, she's also working multiple jobs herself, and so she's quite busy. So I do have a lot of time here in my house where I'm by myself and just left to my own devices. And so I that's when I pretty much primarily record when there's nothing else going on in the house.
Is there is there a secret to maintaining your relationship and your dedication to your job and your dedication to your significant other, as well as your dedication to your music craft. Um, I don't I don't like hearing people call especially when they're as accomplished as you, this thing their hobby. I think it's a little more than a hobby, but that aside, what would be your advice to somebody that wants to get deep into the music, but also maintain those relationships and also maintain the ability to do your day job?
Yeah, that's whew. Um, yeah, it's hard. I mean, like yeah, and it's hard to offer to, that kind of, advice to other people, if they're not you, I guess I know myself
Yeah.
pretty well at this point. As I said before, if your heart's in music, you're going to find a way to do that, whether it costs you money on the front end or costs you money to do so. Like if your love is there, then you're gonna do it. Obviously, my family comes first. My fiance, my son, everybody, all my parents are obviously getting older. So all these guys come first. So knowing that, you have to find a way to make, to be sure to, have the means in place in which you can take care of them. Obviously, my parents are getting up there in age and needing more and more help as time goes along. There's going to be a time where they're probably going to need to be, they're going to have more assistance throughout a daily basis, whether it be through nursing staff at home or whether they, end up in a home, that kind of thing. These are all things that happens to everybody. So being in the hospital, I see a lot of people, especially kind of caught off guard by the just the financial burden that these kinds of things that pop up in life can have, and so it's important for me to make sure that I have my day gig solid. It's I can depend on that long term, and then the music. The music kind of it takes it's the third priority, so it comes into play when everything else I can ensure everything else has been taken care of. I don't sleep a lot.
Yeah.
So it's not unusual for me to have a month where I don't sleep more than maybe 4 or 5 hours a night. And I'm sometimes I'll be down here in the basement at 4 or 5 in the morning practicing guitar, before I go into my shift at 7. And then I might be playing guitar that night if she the fiance she's an early riser, goes to bed early, so sometimes I have a lot of free time at night. But it's always around the family life. The family comes first, and
Right.
I just I have a very almost an obsession with music, but and so I find my ways to make it work. You do it when you can, and if it's
Right.
something that you love to do, you're going to find a way to do it.
As Warren Zevon said, I'll sleep when I'm dead. Right.
That's
Um,
what my both my
um,
professors in medical school and the School of Music both were telling me that too when I was studying.
so it sounds like, and I heard this from the first podcast guest I had, a guy named Jim Higgins, local drummer. He's in the band, the Chattanooga Horn Authority. But we talked about this, and I think I'm going to find, and we're going to find it's universal among all the musicians that I talk to that have this balance of day job, relationship to family, significant other, relationship to music is. I liked your follow the heart, but also have the awareness to know that there is some balance that you have to find in your life. And that balance is I have to be good to the job because I have that responsibility to bring in money to pay the bills, to um, help the family. I have a responsibility to communicate with my significant other and let them know what my needs and where my heart is, not just with him or her, but also with music. And so I think what I've heard is it's a lot of a balance and a lot of awareness and a lot of really good communication.
Right. Yeah. Very much so. Very much so.
When you are playing around town and getting gigs around town, do you guys book those gigs yourself, or do you use a booking agent, a talent manager?
Uh, Personally, I don't use any booking agent. I'm pretty sure the guys with Premier Jazz, who also are managing off the top, they don't. I think they're their own booking agent, their own LLC. I'm pretty sure. So they're doing all the work on their end. We're just the musicians that show up. A lot of my gigs here in town are all still by word of mouth. And I do have some connections from previously, obviously, but
And do you guys have an electronic press kit, EPK, that you work with when you're doing the word of mouth stuff?
I'm sure they do. Again, most of my stuff is word of mouth, and a lot of my jazz stuff I do is mostly private stuff anyway. So I'm playing
Right.
just parties and venue, small venues, that kind of thing. I do have some EPKs, but honestly, nobody's really ever asked for them. They kind of just knew I was playing with so and so, and they wanted me to
Right.
come play with somebody else, and that's how it happened.
So, Joe, we're just about wrapped up here. I want to thank you once again for joining me today. Just one last question. I want to know, and I think the audience would like to know, what's the difference in your music life now from when music was your profession and you got up every morning and you went to bed every night and all you did all day was music and you got paid for it? How do you see that different from now to where being a physician is your day life and being a musician, you called it your hobby, on your days off and in the evenings? How do you see that different from your previous life when you were just solely a musician professionally?
Sure, yeah. Um, so as I'm sure a lot of these guys here in town who are doing it full time can attest, it is your sole source of income. You're responsible for, waking up every day and playing. When I was doing music full time, there were uh, wedding bands and country music artists and heavy metal bands and punk rock bands. Um, in addition to all the jazz stuff I was doing, but it was something that you had to do in order to make ends meet. So I would there was nights I would be going from a literal heavy metal gig to a jazz gig with I had to bring two different guitars. I had to bring two different amps, and the biggest difference is that when you're doing music full time, you are um, subject to be playing things you might not always want to do. Um, Styles of music you may not enjoy, but in order to make ends meet, financially for you and your family, you're obligated to do those. Um, After getting out of the music industry, the music profession full time, I was able to, uh, really scale back the things I was playing to things I mostly wanted to do. I was able to, for the most part, decide, what ensembles I was playing with, when I was playing. If it was too late at night, I could just pass it, I could leave it, sub the gig. Um, so I was able to really kind of attenuate the gigs to what I wanted to be doing as a musician. You have the kind of, the freedom to do so. Whereas before I was very, very constrained, and oftentimes doing things it was either in a genre I didn't really care for or didn't really like, or in a venue I didn't really want to be at.
Yeah, yeah. It sounds like you're describing music as a hustle versus music as as a choice.
Yeah, yeah, but it's very much a hustle. As we talked about earlier in the podcast, that making ends meet is one of it, is part of it. But then the things you're going to need later on in life, like health insurance and retirement funds and the ability to take care of your parents and family. I have a sister, she might need some help down the road. So um, it's it's hard to do that, even with the music hustle. Even if you're killing it now, it's hard to do. It's hard to make those uh, those things happen later on in life without maybe some assistance with a full time job.
Makes sense. Well, Joe, thank you very much. We appreciate your time and help today and sharing your story. Tell us a little bit about where you're going to be playing in the next month or two.
Sure. Well, the Monday Night Big Band plays the first Monday of every month at Barking Legs Theater.
Cool.
I will also be playing at Barking Legs Theater towards the end of October. I think October 29th is for the Wednesday Jazz. We have some upcoming gigs with the Premier Jazz Orchestra, but I think those are mostly private gigs, private venues. But if you can come out and support the guys at Barking Legs on the Mondays and us in October, that'd be great.
Awesome. Will do. I'll put the plug out on the website for you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. From the Rooftop Music Podcast is brought to you by Rooftop Music Rehearsal and Recording Studio, Chattanooga, Tennessee. For more information, please visit rooftop-music.com.